Jose Lima, how are you?
I'm doing good, Greg. How are you?
It's good to see you again. I know you were working very hard with the candidate for the provincial election, but now here you are, the NDP candidate for the Cambridge riding for the federal election. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really an honor to be able to talk to people. A little bit less snow than we had provincially, which I appreciate, but to be able to talk to people, especially in the times that we're in, and connect with your neighbors and say, hey, we're in the middle of an election. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what's best for you and your family and how we can move past the issues that we're facing together.
Yeah. You know, it's not an issue for anybody unless it becomes an issue for them, right? Yeah. So there's all kinds of issues out there. There's all kinds of things that we need to fix in society. Some of them actually pertain to individuals. Some of them pertain to other individuals. So, you know, everybody's kind of swinging their own bat, right? And saying, hey, what bugs me and what doesn't bug me. One thing that bugs everybody all the time, I think, but it seems to float on the level of priority. Obviously, this federal election, it's not the priority. But healthcare. Yep. We went through, you know, a global pandemic just 5 years ago. Yep. The reason why I'm a little bit scruffy and is because I just recently had neck surgery. But I've had the occasion to be under the knife twice in the last 4 months. So I had a smaller procedure done and then this procedure done. And it really came from my perspective to really appreciate the health system that we have. Yep. Doctors were very attentive to my interests and my needs. Going through the experience of surgery was, you know, nobody wants to do that, but I have to tell you, it was, you know, a pretty enjoyable experience. Yep. You know, I was terrified, obviously, going into it, but coming out of it, I said that really wasn't a big deal because I was well taken care of by the people. It was the people making the system work. Yep. And so we come out of a global pandemic. We're into this crazy tariff nightmare right now with Donald Trump. But the fact of the matter is the importance of healthcare never goes away.
And I think it's one of the things that we're most proud of as Canadians is our free universal public healthcare. I mean, it's something that we as New Democrats have fought for decades now and will continue to fight for. In our platform, you know, Jagmeet Singh announced a plan to hire more doctors, a plan to make sure that rural and northern communities have access to healthcare and hire local doctors and train locally, which is an issue that we also face here in Cambridge, and also to work with the provinces so that our healthcare continues to retain and hire the people that gave you a good experience when you needed it. And my mom, when she went through surgery a couple of years ago. But so retaining those folks, making sure that they're able to be trained locally, but also making sure that our provincial governments are working with the federal government to keep it public instead of the Canada Health Act being used to privatize healthcare.
Yeah, and there's no question about it. There is, you know, there are some. We do have a system right now that's propped up a little bit by private healthcare with respects to eye doctors and chiropractors and physiotherapists and, you know, all kinds of other medical services that happen. And so I think broadly we know that there's a role for private healthcare services to be in place. But we went through a pandemic that we found out at that point that it was only the government that was going, it was only the universal healthcare program that was going to save us through that. And
through partnerships with, because, you know, we are in the Chamber of Commerce, but through partnership with local businesses, even if we take it to a local perspective. I was just touring MW Canada, and they were talking about, you know, during the pandemic, their contracts and the ways that they step out. And I remember the programs that the Chamber of Commerce did to connect local businesses, that some of which, you know, weren't open, but to bring back their workers and ensure that people in Cambridge had access to the support and services and infrastructure that they needed.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned MW Canada because they're a great member of the Chamber of Commerce, but but very passionate about the rapid screening kit program that the Chamber initiated to small and medium-sized businesses. They were, boy, if it wasn't for that program through Health Canada and through the Ministry of Health, MW would have had to shut down. They have people working right next to one another. They didn't know whether they were, infected or not infected. So people need that level of comfort. But I guess where I worry is we're now from an economic perspective, we're into this complete disaster from a tariff. Well, it's just complete stupidity. Let's be honest about it. But we don't forget the lessons we learned through the pandemic. That we recognize that building a strong and vibrant and robust economy is essential so that we can pay for the healthcare needs and all of those other problems. What is your perception on the fact of other parties or other players coming in on whether or not they'll prioritize that and whether or not the NDP will prioritize the economy to ensure we can pay for things?
And what we're also seeing is the tariff conversation is also bringing instability to the economy, which further highlights the problems that you're talking about in terms of making sure that we have a healthy economy. Well, if the economy is unstable, when are tariffs going in and what sectors are going to be impacted? Right now in Canada, thousands of people, it's Monday morning, thousands of people woke up this morning and they didn't go to a job because they've already been laid off.
Yeah. In
Cambridge, I've been talking to small local business owners. They're already, unfortunately, getting ready to write the layoff letters. And so I'm running to be the next member of parliament, and I'm running as your New Democrat candidate because my goal is to be in it for you. Part of building a healthy and robust economy is supporting middle class and working families to make sure that they have the supports that they need so that businesses can retain the people that they need. So when a family wants to move to Cambridge, that family needs to know that they have healthcare that's accessible, that their children can go to a school that has the supports that their child needs, that the roads that they drive on are safe, right? So building the economy stems from retaining workers. And so for me, protecting workers helps to provide businesses and the economy overall with the supports that we need and with the workforce that we need. Because in order to retain people, we need, and I've heard you talk about retaining doctors, we need to show people that we're ready to be there for them. We need to show people that their government is strong, that their government listens to their concerns, but also that their government is willing to act. Especially in this time, because we're having to relook at our relationships, if you will, right? Manage and figure out what does it look like when the closest neighbor to us threatens us in very real and damaging ways, and how do we stop that? How do we rise up as Canadians? Because we Canadians are incredible people. We're loving, we take care of each other. It's the beauty of being a barn-raising community, right, in Cambridge. And we take pride in that. But part of taking pride in that is making sure that there's supports there to help workers so that then businesses can retain and train those workers.
On the federal election, of course, we're talking about our relationship around the world. I think the relationship Canada has around the world with foreign jurisdictions is at a very high level. We're well respected. We're well regarded. We're only 41 million people. We're a small player in the grand scheme of things, but everybody seems to want to do business with us. Well, with the exception of one country that we do all of our business with that seems to not want to play ball anymore. But leadership is really, really important on the scale of international relationships. Do you think our leadership on the foreign playing field has faltered? And do you think, what do you think we should be thinking about and our path towards becoming that global leader we once were?
I think this is a very important time to be having this conversation about the relationships we have, around the world. And part of it is, how are we presenting ourselves to the world, but also what are we doing in Canada to make sure that when we go out and build relationships, and we are in a time where we need to build new relationships and forge those bridges, right? And make sure that we aren't so reliant on one set of practice. But part of that also includes building a Canada where people can thrive. So building an economy and a workforce that's strong, so that we can then have those relationships and then be a global player in the world stage. And in terms of leadership, we have seen over the last few years and over several governments, whether federal, provincial, but we're in a federal election, so we'll stick to federal for now. We've seen an erosion of some of the things that the government was responsible for. And so we're in some crisis. We talked about healthcare. We can get into housing. We're in a time of reckoning, if you will. And I think in a time like this, it's going to take us coming together, and leadership has to be there. So we're going to see what the result of the election is, but our leadership, personally, I think, starts locally. It starts with talking to our neighbors and building those bridges locally, so that then we can have conversations about who do we want to represent us in Ottawa, to have those conversations with the government, to have those conversations in committee, to be able to present legislation and put up bills that will directly impact and create opportunities for the people that they represent. So in this case, who are we sending to Ottawa to positively impact the people of Cambridge in this beautiful riding that we call home, regardless of who the government is, but who's going to be there to fight is the key question for me.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think we're probably in the crosshairs. This is probably not the optimal time to be having an election of any kind when you're really dealing with the sovereignty issue of your nation, but also the economic reliability of your relationships around the world. Because Canadians have always put a strong value on the social fabric as well, and said we are our brother's keeper. We reckon, even conservative governments of the past have recognized we are our brother's keeper. We need to make sure that we take care of those who can't otherwise take care of themselves, and provide for those who are at the lower end of the economic scale. The problem is right now is we've got this real uncertainty. And this is not just, I talk to businesses all day, as you well know. This is not just businesses saying, look, I don't know whether there's tariffs or not tariffs. This is literally uncertainty in almost every walk of life. And, I think coming out of this, I certainly hope that regardless of the outcome of the federal election, from a leadership perspective, that the parties come together in some manner and say, look, you know what, we've got to fix what's broken, and virtually everything is broken at this point. Do you think that the NDP party will come together with whomever is elected? Do you think that if the NDP party is the party elected, that the others will rally around them as well?
Absolutely, and it's something that you mentioned the pandemic earlier in our chat. It's something that we as New Democrats did in the pandemic. To provide people with the support that they needed, to make sure that the government was there when it was time for the government to act. And I will say, in times of uncertainty, it's not our place as leaders, it's not our place as a government, but even just as community leaders, as people who care about the place that we live, to be wish-washy or just to say, maybe this will take care of itself, or if we only ask nicely. In times of uncertainty, it's up to us to be bold. We have to recognize that we're put in a position of trust, be it as a candidate, as someone seeking public elected office, as chair of the Chamber of Commerce. We need to be bold in our work because our people need us to be. And so in terms of working collaboratively, we've seen during the campaign, it is a Team Canada approach. Regardless of who the next government is, it is a Team Canada approach. Leaders across the political spectrum, Bloc, NDP, Liberal, Conservative, have shared that message with Canada over the last week or so, especially last week. And that's what's going to continue happening. But the question is, whoever we elect and send to Ottawa, what is their priority?
Yeah.
Because we can be a Team Canada approach, but with the wrong priorities.
Yeah.
And so, right, so it's about, for me, who is in it for you? Who's in it for working in middle-class families to make sure that we strengthen our economy?
Yeah, I certainly hope that regardless of who gets elected, the priorities are going to be the same, right? Because there's things we have to do that we need to do. I love your big, bold ideas idea. That actually would normally be our kind of our conversation during the federal election. What's your big, bold idea? Right now, there's, any idea is a big, bold idea because of so much uncertainty. But Jose Lima, I want you to tell us a little bit about you.
Sure.
And then tell us why we should vote for you.
Sure.
So go ahead.
So my name's Jose de Lima. I'm almost 27. I'll be 27 next week. I'm a social worker by trade, so I work in social services here in downtown Cambridge. I'm a proud, child of a single mother. I moved to Cambridge when I was 8 years old. I've had the honor of calling Cambridge home ever since. Shortly after, my mother and I faced some challenges, and unfortunately we were forced to go into an emergency shelter. And that experience and growing up, seeing my mom work 2 to 3 jobs, sometimes going to school hungry myself, showed me the challenges that we face as Canadians, but also the opportunity that our governments have to help people. And so knowing that today, unfortunately, there were children that went to school hungry in Cambridge, and that there's still a lot that we need to do. I'm running to be the next member of Parliament for Cambridge because I believe in our community. This is the community that welcomed me with open arms, that made sure that my family, my mom and I, were taken care of when we needed help. And this is the community that I have the privilege of serving. And I've worked in social services for 6 years now. So I've had the privilege of serving the community and building those bridges, working with elected officials and representatives across party lines, working with every single person that has served as our mayor since I moved to Cambridge. So Doug Craig, Catherine McGarry, and Jen Liggett. We have many different thoughts politically, but when it comes to the community, it's our responsibility. I talked about being bold. It's our responsibility to be bold and put those aside for a minute. And so I'm running because I know that in Cambridge, we deserve better. And as a country, we've seen what New Democrats can do. Over 3 million people have access to dental care because of the NDP. Right now, in the emergency shelter system, we're seeing seniors as the highest growing population and demographic in emergency shelters because, unfortunately, rent is going up, housing isn't affordable, and they can't afford to pay their medication. So that's why, as New Democrats in the last legislature, we fought for pharmacare. And our fight isn't over in any way, shape, or form. When it comes to standing up and protecting working middle-class families, it's what we've done from the beginning. That's why Tommy Douglas back in the 60s and 70s fought for healthcare. That's why Jagmeet Singh and our caucus of 25 MPs fought for dental care and pharmacare, and that's why I'm running.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned Tommy Douglas at the very end there, and of course he brought in universal health care after I was born. But when I was born, I actually was born with whooping cough, and I had to spend my first 6 weeks of life in the hospital. And the vaccine that I had to take at that time was $35. My dad was a laundry truck driver at the time, made about $18 a week. $35 to save my life was a lot of money. Today we look at at that, regardless of your economic background, that vaccine would be given to that child, and
Yep.
without any questions being
Yep.
asked, and without any stigma of, are you a corporate giant or are you a laundry truck driver?
Yep.
It really wouldn't matter. So, we are lucky as Canadians, and it's not without the good fight, I think, from every party. We even look back at where we are today and say, the economic well-being of this country was really brought forward because of those back in the Mulroney government who fought for free trade, who said, we can strengthen both economies by having an agreement between two countries. That, of course, is torn up and thrown into the wind because somebody doesn't think that it served them well, and yet, we all know that it did. So the fight is on. It doesn't matter whether you're NDP, Liberal, Conservative, Bloc, or Green, or whoever it happens to be. The fight will always be on. So, and I'm so proud to have a young man like you,
Thank you,
at your age, standing up and saying, my job is to, my life existence is to serve those who I live with and surround myself with. So congratulations,
thank you.
And thank you very much for putting up with all of us who want to ask you questions. Jose, good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Okay.